The Blacktongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman is the best 2021 fantasy release that I have read yet this year. It's coming out very shortly, so tune in and I will tell you why you definitely need to pre-order. I am once again Steven, your favorite quadriplegic booktuber. Thanks for tuning in to this Phantology review. So from a high level, the book is a swashbuckling first-person narrative from a thief who goes on an adventure across an entire continent and is somewhat charming as he does so. His mission is of course mysterious and motives are questioned as Kinch faces enemies of all shapes and sizes on his quest to unravel the mysterious events that have brought mankind to its knees. So overall, this is just brilliantly done. I said this was the top book that's been released yet this year that I've had the pleasure of reading, and you need to read it. I mean, this has got to be one that's on your list. There's a very heavy Dungeons and Dragons influence with the magic, defined classes, inventory counting, money counting, quests, abilities, etc. If you're a fan of D&D, or if you like series like Gentlemen Bastards by Scott Lynch, you're definitely going to want to check out The Blacktongue Thief. It's got a lot of elements of both. I'd also say there's some Dresden Files in there with the first-person narrative and the fast action. I could see like a combination of Gentlemen Bastards and Dresden Files get you to The Blacktongue Thief. So Christopher Buehlman has written a few books before, mostly horror. I believe this is his first venture into fantasy. He's listed as a comedian, playwright, poet. He's a man of many talents. He actually does the audio, which I listened to as part of a audio advanced review copy. And I believed that he was Irish up until I looked him up and saw that he's from Florida. So the guy has a flair for the dramatic, and he can obviously not only write, but also perform. This is really well done from someone who is an expert in the field. It's a planned trilogy, so the first book, the story is fairly self-contained, so honestly you could read the first book and you don't necessarily need to commit to the full trilogy. Like, I feel like I got a full story, but there are enough hooks in where I'm very much interested in continuing to read. But at the same time, if you're not sure and you just want to read something that doesn't necessarily have that guarantee, I know some people are a little hesitant going into a trilogy level commitment. Don't feel that way because the first book is satisfying on its own. So pros of the book, why should you read? One, if you have a sense of humor. The Blacktongue Thief is very funny throughout. It's got this dry, sarcastic, matter-of-fact wit that I very much enjoy. If you're an Abercrombie fan, it's got the same type of stuff, but it's just so much on the nose here. The first-person narrative really brings it out, really makes it enjoyable. There's also a good romance. We were talking on our Discord not too long ago about the dearth of books with a strong romance, strong and believable romance, and I think we have that here a little bit. It's not explored super in-depth. This story does go fairly fast-paced, but I really enjoyed the romance aspect to it. So if you're someone like myself, like if I would have known going in that the book had a romance, which I did not, if I had known that, I would have been even more excited. Now, if you like D&D, I said you'd like this one, and like I really can't stress that enough. It's got so many aspects of Dungeons & Dragons, down to the main character is a thief and fits all of your stereotypical thief type attributes, but it's not too much where it's weird. So if you like Dungeons & Dragons, you're definitely going to like it. You don't have to like Dungeons & Dragons, but you're going to pick up on just like a few more kind of fun things that are thrown in there. Definitely check it out if you're a Dungeons & Dragons fan. Now, you also need to be okay with less epicness, and maybe this is a con for the book, so just take it as a general warning. If you're someone who needs a big epic conclusion with a big set piece battle, you don't necessarily get that here. It's more of a intimate journey along with Kinch, so you have to be okay with that. And for me, it was fine because that wasn't the story that was promised from the beginning. Like, going into the first pages, you wouldn't think that you're getting into a big epic thing at the end, and you don't, and so that's fine. So as long as the author is fulfilling the promise that he sets up at the beginning of the book, that's good. But if you're someone who just requires that, you're not going to get that, so just letting you know up front, the action is exciting, there is a lot of stuff that happens, but there's no big epic conclusion. At least not in this book. I could see something much bigger happening in the later trilogy, but not in this one. And finally, you need to think lots of different types of magic are cool. And I don't think that's a hard sell to fans of fantasy. In this book, there are soft magic systems where I wouldn't be surprised if a wizard just showed up and he was like a level 20 wizard and he just fireballed everyone. That would be totally acceptable within the realms of the world that has been set up. But there are also very defined rules around like magical tattoos and the way that you can't wear metallic armor when you're trying to do spells, and some of the abilities that Kinch has don't always work. And so there's the soft, there's the hard, there's lots of different types of things. It's very Dungeons and Dragons, which I can't say enough. So that's another pro. Now, what could be better? So if you're not a huge D&D fan, like maybe you've played a few times, you didn't really love it, this might feel like a novelized D&D adventure where you're just following someone along. He's got a lot of different objectives. You're monitoring his inventory. He's kind of cheeky the whole time through. It's very D&D, which I can't say enough. So if you're not a big fan, like, you may not love it all that much. And to kind of follow that vein, it is mostly one character. There are at least 2 other main side characters which I enjoyed, but you're mainly following Kinch. So if you don't like him, like, you'll know from the beginning, he stays the same. Like, you are going to get more and more of his personal narrative, and his dialogue and voice is the same throughout. So if you don't like that from the beginning, like, fine, that's not your preference. It's not going to change, so maybe don't continue. But I really found him to be hilarious, so I hope you do too. I think most people do. There were possibly a couple moments that dragged on. It just kind of goes from setting to setting and action piece to action piece. And there were a few parts where it seemed like it was more of a bridge. Could have been improved a little bit. I say that, but on the other hand, like, I did think the pacing was really good for the most part, where it just kind of kept moving. But maybe a few slow parts. So I'm really, like, if you can't tell, I'm really nitpicking to come up with negative things because I really enjoyed the book. And then finally, it's definitely worth mentioning, if you are offended by gratuitous swearing, you may want to pass. There's a lot of harder swear words, and it's mainly used for comedic effect, not like super dark, if that makes sense. But if you're someone who this is just going to offend no matter what, I would pass. It's just part of the book. It should probably come with somewhat of a rating. So my ratings, I'm going setting 8 out of 10. You start right in the aftermath of the Goblin Wars and the Horse Plague, and it just kind of throws you right into the world, and you're trying to figure it out as you go. But it's not too much. It introduces it gradually enough, so as the reader, I felt very immersed in a natural way. The world is interesting, not super unique, but not too derivative at the same time. So, not a 10 out of 10 world. It's not that unique, but it's solid enough to be 8 out of 10. Pros, definite highlight, because Kinch was hilarious. I cannot stress that enough. I think maybe we could have done with like one more main character in addition to Kinch to kind of balance him a little bit, but the writing is just funny throughout. And it just kind of lends to this tone that really contributes to the book. So I always say, if the prose doesn't take away from the story, then it's a plus already. And this is a definite addition. It just made it so much more enjoyable to read, just following along to all the little things that Christopher Buehlman does. So fantastically written. So characters, I'm going to go 8 out of 10. I did just say we could have used one more main. I think we could have used that to balance Kinch a little bit, because it's just so heavy from him that sometimes I feel like maybe he could have used someone to bounce off of a little more, and some of the main characters are not nearly as dynamic as he is. So 8 out of 10. There's a lot of side characters. They kind of come and go. Usually if they go, they're not going in a super great fate. So there is that. There's a lot of death, and it's not super harsh because of the tone throughout is never super heavy, but there are a lot of tough things that happen. Pacing, 8 out of 10. I mentioned this, as there's a little slow bits, but overall, very much fast-paced. It's not a super long book. 8 out of 10, again, is a solid rating. And then plot, again, 8 out of 10 was kind of the theme for most of these. I thought it was solid throughout. Not super unique, where I'm going to give it a higher plot rating, but there was enough good intrigue where I was interested the whole time in what would happen. However, I was reading it for Kinch. I wanted to know what was going to happen to him. He was the character that I cared about, and so the plot was just almost a vehicle to just hear more of his voice. I think if the plot was stronger, it would have added a little bit more, bring a little more, intrigue into the world, make me a little more interested in what's going on. I think we can see that in the future books. So I'm very excited to see where the series goes. So overall, if you couldn't tell, I'm giving this an 8 out of 10, which is one of my higher ratings. And again, this is the best rated book that I've read yet that has come out in 2021. So definitely don't miss it. The plan is to drop this video right around release day. So pre-order or order, do what you can. Again, thank you for the audio arc. It's always fun and a pleasure and a privilege to be able to review these in advance and try to spread the good word for these solid new books that are coming out. So thanks for tuning in. Watch out for giants, goblins, and assassins adept, and all of the other crazy creatures of the Blacktongue Thief world. See you later.